Guys, you and I, the three of us got to jump into 33 Immortals there. We're only short by 30, but we had some help when we jumped into the preview. It's an interesting event, to say the least. We got an early look. There wasn't a full 33 in our group, which made things a little challenging. We'll get into that. Let's talk about our highlights, though. Michael, why don't you kick us off? What do you think of 33 Immortals?
I think it's a really cool concept, right? It's basically like this roguelike, but instead of just you or maybe you and your buddies, as you know, Drew alluded to, there's 33 of you scattered throughout the lobby. You've got a couple different goals you got to do. And I think that's kind of what sucked me in, right? It's this idea of like, okay, it's just like MMO, this massive multiplayer experience in a roguelike. You're all kind of getting stronger. You all kind of have one goal. It's a really interesting concept. I thought it was fun, right? I thought the idea was fun. There were some really cool fights that we had, like the bosses. I mean, it's a roguelike, right? Like we're early on, we're low levels. Things are kind of challenging, right? There's some crazy mechanics. There's some cool ultimate synergy you could do. And it just kind of had like that fun little vibe with you and your friends where you're like, all right, let's take on this boss. All right, we got to do this. Oh, you got to do this. Oh, hey, I died. Come revive me. Come do this. So I thought that was really, really cool. I thought it had a really, really good idea and really fun gameplay for what we got to play.
Yeah, where are you at?
Oh, building on what Michael said, I think you're absolutely correct on that. But there was, at first, I'm looking at it going, well, there's a lot of information on screen at once. I'm trying to make sense of that, different currencies and what they all amount to and what you can spend them on. And that was a little bit of a learning curve, which makes a lot of sense. But I find when you get through all that, you sort out and actually think about what you want to do as a player in your team of three, or even greater than that. Well, then there's a little bit of limitations. Like, I think there was 4 different weapon types that we had options for. And there were indication there's several other little places where there might be more weapons and things added as time goes on. And I'd like to see that really fleshed out, as well as some of the different variety that we saw when it comes to some of these so-called torture chambers. So on the main map, there's many torture chambers spread throughout the little area, and you have to go through as teams of up to 6 and jump in there and clear them. It's interesting that it gets you to pair with multiple teams at certain times, and that's really fun because, like you pointed out, there's those ultimate attacks, so those abilities that you can use, and that's where the fun really comes in and the teamwork really comes in, and that is made only more obvious by the end of the round. But I'm not sure if you want to get into that yet. What did you think about it, Drew?
I had a fun time, honestly. Jumping in, hanging out was fun, right? It was chaotic for sure. The idea, though, is to go out, level up. It is that roguelike experience, so you need to kind of upgrade and progress, get stronger to then take on that final boss fight, which we'll get to in a second. Because, so the idea though is go out, grab stuff, you die, you come back. There's reaches a point too because your health only can go so far after you've died. It won't rejuvenate all the way back up. So it is. I go back. Do we go back out into the woods? Where then we can kind of put our points into things and grab other perks. And, you know, it is how far do I want to push this run before losing it all and not getting the stuff. But you do get some things. But I had a fun time. My biggest fear, though, is will it last, right? It definitely relies on that 33-player install. We didn't have a full lobby, which we've noticed near the end, right? We felt that going, okay, crap, man, if we had everybody else, maybe this would be a lot different because nobody else is here. It made it a lot more challenging. But right where you said though, Scott, like when you first get in, there's a lot thrown at you. Granted, we don't know if we're actually, it sounds like we're at the very beginning. Sometimes these preview events, you don't quite know where you're diving into, right? Sometimes you're 3 hours in the game or 5 hours in the game. Here, it does feel like, okay, here's your setup. This is who you're going to talk to. This is how you unlock this. So we got the rundown, and then you're into the Inferno kind of situation and go. The map is big, which has to be, right? Because it's supposed to include 33 players, so with another 30 on top of us. I had a fun time, but yeah, at the end of the day, is it going to be enough to hit for everyone? I don't really know. Right? It is. Well, let's pull my brother in is kind of how I look at it, right? Because my brother and I will game often, but if it doesn't click, he's going to bounce early. Or sometimes I'll tend to stick it out a little bit. I like the idea that each of us had a different weapon. We all found our own little hook. So I'm now curious to see, okay, we only had access to 4, right? There's what I'm calling the dual blades. there was the bow, which I used. Michael, you were using the staff, and Scott, you were using the big sword, right? Like, cool. We all have our own play styles. We're all looking to build in our own little situation. And then when you run into everybody else out in the lobby, you team up, and away you go. Now, these little dungeons could only hold up to 6 people. So when we were out there and there's an extra person, somebody got bounced out and you're left behind. But then you get into that, it is that, okay, here's a mini boss fight. If you have a key, which sometimes we did not, other times we did, there's 2 chests. So the one chest, which was locked, would obviously have better loot to drop. So that allows you to upgrade and move on. But the other one just had other points you could spend and things like that. I had fun, guys, to say the least, but I keep going back to, will it stick long enough? Will we be talking about this game in a month from now? What do you think, Scott?
Oh, interesting. I think we have a good chance of being able to speak about this in a month or 2 months' time, as long as that is followed up with a good cadence of content. So if we get updates every couple weeks, every few months, I'm not sure if there's been a schedule set for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the end boss, that end boss fight, the Ascended fight, that was a little too intense, and having a different a chance of other maybe not as hard battles being mixed into there too would be a little bit more refreshing, because going through with your guy you Sal, so pardon me, going through with you guys was one thing, but then I went through again with another group of people, and there was 15 of us towards the end, and it was just, again, we were hit with that unsolvable problem, we'll say. And that was really frustrating. But again, if we had more people and more options of how to build, perhaps that could be mitigated. I went all damage, for example, and I just could not do enough damage.
Yeah. Michael, what about you?
Yeah, I think the longevity of this game depends on the scaling of how powerful you're going to get, right? Because like in a standard roguelike, obviously the first time, the second time you go through, you're not going to beat it, right? On the first time, unless you're like a top tier gamer. How quickly are you going to get to that point where you don't need 15, 20 people, like Scott said, right? Like when we got to the last boss, there was 7 of us, and he had a ton of health, and I think we maybe got like a quarter of the way there, maybe a third, and then we just slowly take damage. There's a couple parts that look like they were unavoidable, and slowly people just kind of fell. And so how quickly is going to be like, all right, you know what, the 3 of us could maybe take that on as 3 people once we hit like level 10 or something like that, right? I think that to me is going to be how long this game lasts. If you get to the point where you're sort of all powerful and 3 or 4 of you can kill the last boss, I think it has sticking power. But if they're going to design this around every time you go to the last boss, you need 15, 20 people alive, I think then it's kind of going to be this thing, since you can only have, I think, parties of 4, maybe parties of 3. Okay, well, I got to hope I get in a good lobby, right? It becomes that, as Drew and I know, it becomes that MOBA problem, right? Like you queue into a predecessor, you queue into a League of Legends, you're like, I'm only one guy. I'm only 20% of the team. You're even less in 33 Immortals. So that's where I think the problem's going to be. If I can carry a lobby with me and my friends, this game has staying power. If I need 15 other randoms that I don't know and couldn't really communicate out with some of the clever emojis on how to play, it's going to be frustrating. You're like, oh man, I got a crappy lobby. I just lose. And that's never a feeling that's going to stick well.
Yeah, no, it is concerning, right? Getting to that boss fight was just brutal. If we don't get there with all 33 players, they've got to have a scaling mechanism in here to go, okay, you know what? You don't have the full lobby that you're supposed to have here. Not everybody survived, right? Because as you go out and you're looking to level up, sometimes you're just not going to make it. And maybe you just died too many times when you got into some of those dungeons, but you can go back and revive it. Maybe you had to bail out or whatever. All of a sudden you go from 33 down to 20, say, and to chip away that health bar was just relentless. Like, you guys do this on purpose, that we're not supposed to beat this because we were so few that we just didn't stand a chance whatsoever. Does that feel different? And this is something you brought up, Scott, as we were playing. I'm like, man, this feels impossible. But if you have all 33 people in there playing, is it possible? I'm sure it is, but at what length, right? Am I going to be at the boss fight for an hour? That was our biggest concern coming out of the preview. Going, I had a lot of fun in the main portion of the game, and then when we got to the boss fight, I was exhausted.
Yeah, it was just a little too much. I don't want to have an easy time breezing through this, but if it were only 5 of us, for example, what if we just fought a different boss?
Yeah, right? Because it goes, you got to queue up. I thought it was cool because there's this circle, time's running out, and it's almost like that battle royale situation. All of a sudden, the walls start caving in, right? So there's this flame that starts eating away at the map. Circle puts you into this the star in the circle there, and you got to defend this as that star fills up, which then teleports you into the final boss fight. You've made it. Let's go. All right, cool. So if you die in there, though, like, you're not making it to the boss fight, and then what? Your party goes, and you're just going to start all over? Like, how does this work, right? Couple concerns, couple questions. Overall, like, man, I had a decent time. I thought the game was cool. I thought the premise is really interesting. Again, it's the sticking power. Does it have it there? What does the roadmap look like? A lot of questions still to follow. Early impressions, though, guys, to wrap things up. I've had a great time. Looking forward to jumping back in on the 18th of March. There is a lot more, I think, ahead of us. And while you're hanging out with friends, it's a good time. Michael, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think if I want to see when I get to like level 8, level 10, right? Because I think at level 8 you can upgrade your weapon. How powerful you're gonna get? If I can get super powerful, I'm gonna love this game. Only thing that we didn't really touch on that I didn't like, at least on controller, the controls felt kind of wonky, right? Like X was your kind of main attack, and after we talked about the last boss, my thumb kind of got tired. We were on it for 50 minutes, and I'm just I'm just hitting it a lot. So curious to see, maybe we can have a little bit easier control scheme, especially on controller. But no, I'm like with you, Drew. I'm excited to hop in, but I think the longevity completely determines on that scaling for me. If I can get uber powerful, I'm in. If not, I'll give it a couple of days and I'm out.
Scott?
Oh, I'm definitely in. Just the same. I want to have a good time and I want to be able to complete the actual thing. So that's going to determine whether I can stay with it or not. But other than that, I think if you find a good pair of people to pair up with, and there's the three of you to run through, I think you might actually have the chance of getting strong enough to defeat Lucifer at the end.
Yeah.
I'll be trying.
No, I think we'll all be there at the end of the day, right? But yeah, check it out because it drops as of our video dropping today as well. It's on Game Pass. It's on PC. So yeah, there's no reason why not to pick it up and try it out. Grab a bunch of friends and away you go. Good luck.